I just returned from a trip to Scottsdale, Arizona to teach at the Scottsdale Artist School. And Shana and I were both teaching, and I thought it'd be kind of cool to do a little travel video as well as having some of the demo that I did in Scottsdale. So I filmed a little bit of the demo. I filmed a little bit of Shana's demo, and I got some testimonials from some of the students about the class, about what they liked, what were the highlights, what were some of the takeaways, and I thought I'd share that with you guys here. We're gonna start this video from the road right now. Where are you going?
Scottsdale.
Scottsdale. Where are we stopping on our way?
A lot of places. Number one, we're stopping at Route 66 Casino because we always do when we drive to Scottsdale. Then, I don't remember which bar we're stopping at.
In Holbrook.
How far is that from Scottsdale?
It's like 2.5 hours or so.
Outside of it?
It's kind of like right in the middle between here and there.
So we're going there.
We always go to this little bar.
Then we might stop at the casino on the way into Scottsdale. Because you could drink at that casino.
You can?
Yeah, remember? We got drinks at the table. And I was like, whoa.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I got a glass of wine.
Oh.
And then to the hotel. ETA is 3:46, but we'll probably get there around 5.
It's just like Vegas.
I just noticed, it's kind of cool sign though. Never noticed the pumps.
I saw the sign. Are you cold?
Freezing. It's so gross out.
How'd you do?
Good. We won.
Did you win?
We won somebody. Back on the road again.
Back on the road.
We were there for like 30 minutes.
Yeah. This is where we're teaching this week, Scottsdale Artist School. Can't wait. First day teaching?
First day teaching.
We're here early. So cool. I love the space. That looks incredible.
Thanks, babe.
Whose tattoo is that?
It's mine.
You have a tattoo?
Oh my god.
Is that the studio dog?
I think so. Resident.
Yeah.
Should get him up there posing.
He said his name is Count Chocolate.
Is it?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Hi there, buddy.
So just to show you guys, so this painting is 4 days. We're 4 days into the demo. I want to show you guys just how I oil out with Liquin. As you can see, some of the areas that are matte, as I look at it from the side, we want to kind of unify the entire surface here so that it all has the same luster when we left the painting yesterday. And so it'll bring up some of the luminosity, some of the darks that sink in from those natural pigments we talked about, that sink in. We're going to bring those up as well. Because when they're matte like this, you can't really see the value accurately because it looks lighter than it actually is. So by hitting it with the Liquin as an oil out, it will, you'll actually see the actual value of the color. And so I just use a little bit of Liquin here and a soft brush. And if you can see in the eye, it will come back to, you'll see more of the vibrancy of the color come back. And just a thin coat of the Liquin. Now, Liquin's kind of controversial. People say that it delaminates or it's really bad for your paintings. They don't like alkyd dryers or alkyds. But I visited Harvey Dinnerstein in his studio when I was a student, and he had done all these tests with different mediums that he had used, like Damar varnish, with this turpentine, and he mixed them all with white paint, titanium white. And he had studies that he had done for 15 years, that he had done 15 years ago. And the studies were, the Liquin was the least yellow, and it was the most intact surface. And I remember him telling me that one of his friends who was a conservator at the National Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C., confirmed that the chemical compound of Liquin is safe. And a really interesting, just a quick story about Liquin is, so I took singing lessons. It's really bizarre. I wanted to get out of my comfort zone as a painter and take singing lessons. And so I remember I used to take singing lessons. Before every lesson, though, I would go and have a beer because I was always nervous about taking a singing lesson. And I looked up singing lessons on, I forget the website it was on the internet, and it was, they kind of pair you with a singing instructor that's in your town. And so I found one in Brooklyn, and her name was Alicia Upchurch. And go to her space and everything, and take like 2 or 3 lessons with her. I'm not getting any better at singing, but she's awesome. And she had all these paintings around her apartment, and the paintings were really well done. And I said, "Oh, who did the paintings?" And she goes, "Oh, they were my father's." And I was like, "Oh, that's amazing." And she said that her father used to work for Winsor Newton Paint, and
Who?
Winsor Newton,
Oh,
and that she, her father was like almost like a traveling salesman for them. Anyway, cut to like maybe 2 years later, I'm at SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design, and I'm talking about art materials with a guy, John Rise, who builds easels. And he's actually responsible for building the Santa Fe Best easel and all these easels that I used in my career and that I love. The Santa Fe Best 2 easel is like one of the best easels around. It's like super sturdy. I had mine for 7 or 8 years before I gave it to another artist when I moved out of Brooklyn. Anyway, he was telling me about this guy who used to work for Winsor Newton that created Liquin. And the guy who created Liquin was this guy named, I think it was Wendell Upchurch, her father.
Oh my
yeah,
God.
Alicia Upchurch's father. And so I was like amazed. He had passed away, sadly, I think probably 10 years before I met her. If she's out there and hears this online and everything. But I thought it was really amazing that I met the daughter of the guy that started this. And the secret to Liquin, what she told me was that, actually no, John told me, the secret to Liquin that Wendell said is if you add a little bit of linseed oil, like 10% linseed oil to your Liquin, it will have even more luster to it. But they don't do that at the factory. So that's my oiling out. So oiling out, you can see that the darks are now back. They have a kind of a sheen to them, a luster to them. And the paint actually has the surface of the painting actually has a very nice like liquefied surface that when we add paint, we were talking about this yesterday, the paint kind of just melds into the painting a little bit easier. It's not like you're working on just a dry surface. There's a moisture to it, and it makes it easier to paint. Did you guys have questions at all? I think Marilyn had some questions.
I do. My painting, so, you know, when something is really dark, you happen to put almost a darker ruby red on the dark.
Mm-hmm.
So was that, is that to create to put a cooler color on that, a vibrancy?
Yeah, the ruby red within your shadows, within your quote-unquote darks. Cool. So ruby red is what we talked about is a colder red, right? It moves more
Right.
towards a purple and a blue versus the permanent bright red or cad red that moves us towards an orange and a yellow on the color wheel, just simplistically. And having a cooler color in your shadows is preferable because we don't want that red to really pop in your shadows. You want your shadows to be more neutral and colder for the most part. They can have undertones of heat, but as long as the heat is pushing into the canvas, is a little bit colder than using like a really hot red that would come forward, move outside of the space of the shadows.
Yesterday, you helped me with, I was having trouble with reflected light under his chin.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the Naples yellow that you have up there. Would that be something you would use in that shadow, or is that not a good thing to put in for that reflected light?
Yeah, so reflected light's an interesting thing. when we start to, it's a lot darker than we actually see it when we're looking in the shadows.
Yeah,
And so that's something to be aware of, is that you want to think about the reflected light in terms of the whole. So this idea of stepping back and squinting at the whole of his face, but then kind of peripherally look at the shadows to see if it goes away or if it stays there. Because this shouldn't be lighter than anything. Your lightest light in your darks, right, your reflected light, should never be as light as your darkest light in the light. Does that make sense? So anything that we have in our light side of the face, so imagine we have like a sphere, and we have our light side and we have a dark side of the sphere. Light side, dark side. Nothing in here can be lighter than the darkest light, so it doesn't cross over into the section of the sphere that would cause something in here to pop out and be brighter. You know, unless you have like something like an ear that sticks out, you know, that's catching light. So that's included in the light and halftone pattern of the mass of the head.
I think the point of my question is, when I squint my eyes and I'm looking at your palette, I'm seeing all of your radiant whites and that Naples yellow as lights, and I see that reflected light as some sort of a yellow, but I'm thinking maybe I should use yellow that's not.
Yeah, I would go.
That light.
Yes, I would go towards a yellow ochre,
Right.
or even just yellow ochre, probably with like a green,
Okay.
to kind of knock it back a little bit in value.
I'm
It's hard for me to see. I need to see what you see in your spot. So we'll talk about that later today while you're painting. Definitely. But that's a good. I like you're kind of diagnosing it, what you're seeing.
When you consider your painting finished, if the model gives up on you, do you use Liquin to varnish it?
That's another great question. I do. I don't, because it takes so long for a painting to dry, to varnish it. Also, I don't love playing with varnishes. When I do the Liquin at the very end, it has this, it dries the way I want it to. It gives it this satin kind of finish, and all the colors are lustered up to how they were when I was painting it, just like when we oil out. And so I tend to leave out, I just end it with that Liquin, quote unquote varnish, because if it's a painting of value and someone purchases it, then I'll have them do the varnishing. You know, I'll have them curate the painting, and hopefully if the painting's good enough and they care about it enough, it'll be taken care of with a varnish in like a year or something like that, you know.
It takes
But
like 6 months to a year.
something like that to cure, like for the paint to cure. And I just want to keep painting. I don't want to be varnishing, and I don't want to be a conservator. I think I want to give jobs to conservators, and hopefully they'll rescue my painting, you know. But I don't. The paintings are never in like extreme places and circumstances where I feel like they need to be varnished right now. Are they going to last 500 years? Again, that's probably not my problem, you know. But for collectors that really believe in the work, then a lot of collectors have conservators, or they know people who conserve things, or, you know, they can. But on the wall, it's funny, I've actually, for the same method, I've seen paintings of mine that the gallery has purchased back. Like the very first figurative painting I sold at the gallery for like $2,500, which was a ton of money for me starting my career. They bought back at auction somewhere, and now they're reselling it. And I saw the painting in the gallery 20 years later, and it looked exactly like it did when I painted it.
Wow.
The same finish and everything. And so with that kind of gave me the confidence of being like, yeah, I don't think I need to varnish. You know, I think that what we're doing here and the paint itself, thinking about the paint film itself as being a very strong layer of how I apply the paint and the materials that I use, that they're pretty archival.
I have a question about what Tim Reese, I think they were, probably you all were laughing about, he said something about the sparkle in the eye, that
Oh, yeah,
He would make the sparkle and then put 3 coats of varnish over it to make it. What is
yeah.
that?
So,
What is-
oh, that's a great thing. So, artists like Rembrandt, they would consider the light in the room of the gallery or the space or the museum that the painting was in, and how it was being viewed in terms of how the painting was painted. And so, if I had a highlight on his eye, what Rembrandt would do is that he would put a lot of medium that was very shiny and a big blob that was 3-dimensional that would stick out like a big drop of oil paint that's a glossy blob in the eye, and that would catch the room light and make that light lighter than any paint that we have, because it's a sparkle of light that's hitting it. So it's a gloss blob. So he was saying that he was going to varnish it twice and make it like extremely visible and twinkly, you know. So we're all just joking about that. It's
Yes,
like
that's what I-
it's like stupid art jokes. Like, how can you be the biggest art nerd in the room? You know, like talk about like the texture of the painting and how it's viewed. But that was a great question. Yeah, last night during the Thirsty Thursday at Scottsdale Artist School, kind of fun. This area right here, I want to soften out a little bit.
So,
Talked about painting with intention, and when I'm looking at your palette, it looks like it moves from lights on the left to mediums in the middle and darks on the right. Was that an intention thing, or I'm just making more out of it than I need to?
No, I think that you're not making more out of it. I think that it's my palette is based on how I studied,
Okay.
and so my first teacher, she had gotten a palette from. Her palette was developed from her people she studied with, like Dan Green and Bert Silverman and Harvey Dinnerstein. And so I kind of, just like you guys are taking a class to learn my palette, you know, it gave me a structure. It was the first kind of workshop I took, first class I was in that was like an oil painting class that was like a long form. I was in the painting class for like 3 years, you know, and so from there it kind of gave me this, it gave me a concept to work around, a structure to work around, and I've been adding stuff to it since.
Okay.
And so it just was like our lights and darks are next to each other for the most part, but these are like my earth tones that kind of move me towards
Okay.
shadow. It's more arranged color families.
Right.
So here's my yellows, my reds, my umbers, my chromatic lights, and my blues and greens. So it's just grouped together. And the most important aspect, I don't care how you set up your palette, because your structure could be totally different in how your mindset is and whatever's going to help you, but always have these colors that you put on your palette in the same place every time you paint. So that way you're not searching for anything.
I
So,
like the way you have the warms and then you have the cool right on, or vice versa. What is it? You have the cool and the warm,
yeah. Well, I just want to make sure that, like,
raw umber and then
yeah,
burnt umber.
over through here. Well, I just want to make sure that this becomes intuitive, so that it's just easy for me to paint better, you know? I'm not having to search for things to once I form the idea in my head, the intention, right? Then it's easy for me to find the tools to hopefully make it actionable.
Well, before, I'd like to say what I expected before I got it here.
Okay.
And honestly, I thought, why did I take this class? He's so advanced, I shouldn't have enrolled. And when I got here, David, not only does he share his expertise, but he's so personal. And not only does he give quality time in terms of demonstration, but there's quality time in painting. And then he comes to each student and addresses them at their level. And I appreciate that so much. There's some very advanced people in here, and I call myself a beginner, and yet he's able to explain things that I comprehend, and I value that very much. I was afraid of taking the class because I was afraid of not being good. And what David is extremely reassuring that it's a process, that you look at the big shapes and you're not really making mistakes. You're learning value and the big shapes, the values, and then how to mix I love the paints and the categories of warm and cool, so that we know how to adjust our paintings to the model. And that was a wonderful thing. So there was fear and now there's no fear. And I appreciate that. The other thing that I really loved is he views the importance of community, and he really fosters that, of getting to know the students, getting to know us, and it's fun. It's absolutely fun. So it's one cohesive, wonderful learning experience, not only with art, but with relationships.
Yeah, I'm super excited to get back into my own studio and put to practice. I took a lot of notes, super practical. David's really helpful. And yeah, just watching him work and then being able to work on our own paintings, just really practical advice really simple things that I've watched a lot of videos, but being in person that I just never would have seen or known. I loved the class size. I loved just being able to hear how you're processing and watching you paint. It was really fun. And I think just feeling a lot less intimidated, like understanding how to break things down in the way that David teaches. And
The highlight personally for me was the amount of vocalization you had while doing your demos. And then also the personal attention. I'm grateful for the one-on-one technical advice. We got extra painting time today, and we had an excellent model. So that was all good. I definitely, I overcomplicate. I take things very literally, so I was trying to work on that supply list. But in the grand scheme of things, you need a squirt of Liquin from someone. One of the other students can have it. So don't blow all your budget on all the supplies. You'll be okay, I think.
Since we're very close to 50,000 subscribers, I'm going to do a raffle for a painting. Actually, the demo painting that I have in this video, I'm going to raffle off. $25 a ticket, and the link will be below in the description on how to enter to purchase a ticket. If you found this content useful, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Take care. Cheers.